Hi everybody, it's week 13 and this video is an announcement to let you know I'm lightening your load a little bit for this week. There is no PowerPoint lecture for week 13. Week 13 happens to correspond with the week prior to the Thanksgiving break. There's absolutely no work assigned on the Thanksgiving break. So what that means to you from a practical sense is that I have some work for you to do in week 13, some readings to do, and a discussion question to engage each other with. But beyond that, I have no usual PowerPoint lecture. I just want to explain to you the couple of things that I'd like you to look at for week 13, and then I'd like you to use the rest of that time wisely, the time that you allocate to doing your work for this course. To work on your final project. We are nearing the end of the semester. If you look at the calendar, we're already in November. I happen to be recording this on Election Day. I hope you voted. I did about 3 hours ago. So um, I I want to talk about one issue that I said we were going to come back to. And so let me explain those readings. I gave you two readings to look at, and that's it. They're really relatively short. There's one by Keller from Governing Magazine, which is quite short. It talks about the pressures on governments as it comes to the workforce. So some of the pressures we've talked about, such as, for example, an aging workforce and what that might mean for succession planning. I also gave you an article by Light, Paul Light, and he's writing there for the Volcker Alliance. And what he's talking about in that article specifically is what we call the blended workforce at the federal level. What Light purports to do in that article really is dispel at least one myth that is still pretty prevalent, I think, unfortunately, and that is that the size of the federal workforce has grown over the last 30 or 40 years. Really, it hasn't. It's stayed really relatively stable. But the other point that Light is making is that the federal workforce is really a blended workforce. So it's not just employees, but it's the work of government at the federal level really is done through employees, classically in bureaucracies, as we might call them. It's done by military personnel in the case of the Department of Defense. It's also done by contractors. Some of these contractors are large scale contractors, some are really personal service contractors, consisting of very small workforces, even as small as one or two people on a contract to do specific jobs. And then the final part that most of the population doesn't really think about at all is the grant workforce. And that is, for example, universities receive grants to do studies and other work for the federal government. The University of Nebraska at Omaha and the University of Nebraska system in all, including the campus at Lincoln and the medical center, are among those grantees of a lot of that grant money to do work for the federal government. So the federal workforce is a blended workforce. Well, to some extent, um, state workforces are also blended. Uh, Specifically, we see at state workforces a lot of work done by contractors to carry out the work of government. Some of those contractors really are in the nonprofit sector. Some are in the for-profit sector, but quite a few, especially when it comes to human services, are in the nonprofit sector. And that model really even filters down to the local level. And when I say local level, I'm talking about cities, towns, counties, school districts, and other special governments. So the question that I want you to grapple with after you read these two short articles is I'd like you to engage in some educated speculation. And when I say that, I'd like you to put to work all the knowledge that you've gained from this course and from the readings we've taken on, as well as a lot of the other readings that you've had through your master's degree program. And I'd like you to talk about what is the future of this blended workforce? Are we in government specifically headed towards a model where we we accept, not just grudgingly like we might accept it now, but we accept the reality of a blended workforce. And if that's the reality, then how does that get implemented? So it is speculation. I'm not expecting you to have all the answers, but I would like you to really be innovative and creative and think about that question because, as it turns out, most of you are the people who are going to be implementing such a blended workforce in the next 20, 30, 40 years. Um, I'm not the person who's going to be doing that. A lot of you are going to be doing that. So I think it's a question that this is the appropriate course to ask that question in. So I'm looking forward to your responses. Again, I think you'll have a little extra time this week to work on your projects. And so that's coming up after Thanksgiving, something I'm looking forward to you sharing with all of us. Thanks a lot, and I look forward to your responses this week.